Okay, so I want to tell you about someone I know. Not a finance guru, not some productivity influencer with a color coded planner and a morning routine that starts at 4 a.m. Just a regular person. Let's call him Alex, who about a month ago decided to actually try budgeting for 30 days straight. And I want to tell you his story because what happened wasn't what either of us expected. Because here's the thing about Alex. He's not bad with money in the way people usually mean. He's not blowing thousands on gambling or buying things he absolutely cannot afford. He has a job, pays his bills, lives a normal life. But he had this recurring thing where by the end of the month, he'd look at his bank account and just kind of go, where did it all go? Like there was no explanation. The money was just gone. And he tried to care about budgeting before. Watched videos about it, downloaded apps, had a whole conversation with me one time about how he really needed to get serious about his finances. And then nothing changed. Life just kept moving and the money kept disappearing. But something was different about a month ago. He called me and said he was actually going to do it. 30 days tracking everything. Real budget. And I said, great, let me know how it goes. I figured he'd last maybe 10 days. He lasted all 30, and what he told me along the way is what I'm sharing with you today. The whole thing, from day 1 to day 30, including the parts that surprised him, the parts that were hard, and the things that genuinely actually changed. Part 1. Setting up. So day 1, Alex sat down with a coffee, opened a spreadsheet, and started doing something he'd never actually done before, writing down his full financial picture. First thing, total monthly income after taxes. One number written down, staring back at him. He told me that felt weirdly significant. He knew the number, obviously, but there's a difference between knowing something and seeing it written as a hard fact on a page. Then he listed all his fixed expenses: rent, utilities, phone, internet, subscriptions. And this is where the first thing happened. He started listing his subscriptions and counted 7. 7 active subscriptions. And here's the part that got me when he told me. He didn't even know he had 2 of them. One was a fitness app he'd signed up for in January, used for about 6 weeks and hadn't touched since. The other was some cloud storage service he'd tried during a free trial and apparently never canceled. Together, about $22 a month, just quietly leaving his account, every month, for who knows how long. He canceled both immediately and told me he felt weirdly proud about it, which, honestly, fair enough. Then came the harder part, going back through 2 months of bank statements to track his variable spending. The stuff that changes: groceries, restaurants, coffee, delivery, clothes, random purchases. He called me after doing this, and I could hear it in his voice, that particular kind of silence that comes before something embarrassing. His total food spending, everything, groceries and restaurants and coffee and delivery combined, was averaging around $480 a month for one person living alone. And look, food is one of life's real pleasures. I'm not here to judge anyone's food budget, but $480 was significantly more than he thought it was. He'd estimated somewhere around $300. He also had about $90 in purchases he could barely remember, things he had to actually sit and think about before he could place. A phone case, a book he hadn't read, something from an Instagram ad that he described to me as a mistake I don't want to talk about. So by day 3, for the first time in his adult life, he had a complete, accurate picture of where his money was going. He decided to use the 50-30-20 rule as a starting point: 50% to needs, 30 to wants, 20 to savings. He adjusted the ratios a bit to fit his actual rent, but that was the framework. And then day 5 brought the first real-time test. A group of friends wanted to go to a restaurant, a nice one they'd been talking about for a while. Alex checked his eating out budget for the week. He'd already spent a good chunk of it on lunch earlier. He went anyway. It was a friend's birthday, and come on. But he ordered carefully, skipped the cocktails, and split dessert with someone. He told me later that it was the first time he'd ever done that at a dinner, consciously made choices at a restaurant based on a budget. And it felt weird at first, and then it felt fine. Part 2. The middle stretch. The first week had that new thing energy. exciting, a little bit game-like. Week 2 and 3 are where it gets real, and honestly, where his story gets more interesting. Around day 8, Alex told me he started noticing something he hadn't expected. The budget was making him think about why he was spending money, not just how much, and that was uncomfortable. He'd look at a delivery order at 10 p.m. and realize it wasn't really about hunger. It was about being tired after a long day, or bored, or just kinda low. The food was comfort, not nutrition. And seeing those purchases tracked in a spreadsheet forced him to actually look at that pattern instead of just do it and move on. There was one evening around day 10 where he opened the delivery app, added something to his cart, checked the budget, and then closed the app. Made pasta instead. 15 minutes, a couple of dollars. And he said the thing that struck him wasn't that he'd saved money. It was that he made a choice instead of running on autopilot for maybe the first time in a while. That started happening more regularly. Not every time, he absolutely still ordered delivery that month, but there was this pause before spending that hadn't existed before. Week 2 also brought a sale. His favorite store had a big seasonal promotion and sent him an email. And normally he would have clicked through and bought something because the logic of it's on sale so it's smart is surprisingly durable. But he had a clothing budget and he'd already allocated part of it for something he actually needed. He looked through the sale, found a couple things he liked, and closed the tab. He texted me about it like he'd done something heroic. And I mean, kind of. For him, it was. Around day 12, he made his first real mistake. He forgot to account for his car needing an oil change. It's a semi-regular expense, not a surprise exactly, but it wasn't in his budget. It threw his numbers off for the week, and he had to shuffle things around. The lesson he took from it? Always have a buffer category. Life produces expenses that don't fit neatly into your plan. He added a miscellaneous line item after that. Days 14 through 17 were the hardest stretch, by his own description. The new thing feeling was completely gone. He was halfway through, hadn't seen any dramatic results, and tracking felt like a chore. He told me he had to actually remind himself why he'd started. He wrote it down in his notes app, just one sentence. I want to stop feeling confused and stressed about money at the end of every month. He said rereading that helped on the days when he didn't feel like doing it. There was also the social dimension, which I thought was interesting. By week 3, he started noticing how much of his social spending was happening more out of habit than genuine desire. Not all of it, he genuinely enjoys being out with people, but some of it was just the path of least resistance. He started suggesting cheaper alternatives sometimes. A walk, cooking at someone's place, a coffee instead of a full brunch. People were mostly fine with it. One day, around day 17, he went grocery shopping with an actual list and an actual budget, $55. He told me he'd never once in his life gone to a grocery store with a number in mind. He came in at 52. He texted me immediately, like he'd won something. And honestly, he kind of had. Part 3. The home stretch and results. By week 4, something had shifted in how he was talking about it. At the beginning, his language was all about restriction. I can't spend on this. I'm not allowed to do that. By week 4, it had quietly changed to something more like, is this worth the trade-off? Same decision, different framing. And that's actually a big deal, because one of those feels like deprivation and the other feels like agency. Around day 23, he checked his savings and saw that he was on track to save more that month than he had in the previous 3 months combined. He called me to tell me, and I could hear that he was genuinely surprised. Not dramatically, it wasn't like he discovered he was secretly wealthy, just a quiet, real, oh, this actually works. The last week, he was more relaxed. He knew his numbers well enough that the tracking felt almost natural. He wasn't consulting his spreadsheet every time he bought a coffee. He'd internalized enough of it that the decisions were happening more automatically. But the right kind of automatic, not the old kind. Day 30. He sat down and looked at the full picture. Here's what the numbers actually showed. He saved about 40% more that month than his average from the previous 3 months combined. Not through some radical lifestyle change, just different choices consistently made. His food spending dropped from around $480 to about $340. $140 redirected to savings just from cooking more often and making deliberate decisions about delivery. His impulse purchases went from about $90 to around $20, because having to register every purchase in a tracking system made him actually evaluate them before buying. 3 subscriptions canceled, saving roughly $30 a month going forward, $360 a year for things he wasn't using. Those numbers are real, but honestly, when he told me about the month, the numbers weren't what he led with.
Part 4. What actually changed? The real stuff. The thing Alex kept coming back to wasn't the savings number. It was something harder to quantify. He said that before this month, money was like background noise. Vague, stressful, always slightly threatening. He knew roughly what he made and had a loose sense of what he spent, but he avoided looking at it too closely because looking at it closely felt overwhelming. And that's a particular kind of low-level stress, the kind that just lives in you, always there, never resolved. After 30 days of actually paying attention, he said money stopped feeling like something that was happening to him. It started feeling like something he had some influence over. And that shift from passenger to someone actually holding the wheel was the thing he kept trying to describe to me. He also figured something out about himself that surprised him. He doesn't actually want most of the things he was buying. When you have to consciously register each purchase, a lot of the automatic spending loses its pull. Not because you're forcing yourself not to want things, the desire just genuinely fades when there's a pause between impulse and action. Most of what he was buying was habit or boredom or a very well-targeted algorithm, not real desire. And the flip side of that, he stopped feeling guilty about the things he did spend money on. Before, there was always this vague, I probably shouldn't, hanging over purchases, even reasonable ones. After the month, if he'd budgeted for something and chose to buy it, he felt completely fine about it, because it was a real decision. He'd evaluated it, chosen it, and owned it. One more thing he mentioned that I think is actually the most important part of the whole story. He started thinking about the future. Not in a scary, abstract way, but in a concrete, okay, what am I actually building toward kind of way. Having a savings number he was consistently hitting made him think about what it was for. He started thinking about a proper emergency fund and a trip he'd been putting off for 2 years because it felt out of reach. Turns out it wasn't if you save a little each month. He'd just never actually done the math before. He's still budgeting. That's maybe the clearest sign that something real changed. It's lighter now, not the intensive tracking mode of month 1, more like a check-in habit, but he's still doing it. He told me he can't really imagine going back to not knowing where his money goes. Not because budgeting is fun, but because not knowing had been quietly stressful in a way he hadn't fully registered until it stopped. All right, that's everything I've got today. If you have a story like Alex's or completely the opposite, I'd genuinely love to hear about it in the comments. And if this was useful, you know what to do. See you in the next one.